First of all, welcome to the very first step of the Forces Wives Challenge Hot Ladies journey. I'm really excited to have so many people signed up on Saturday morning, and also just a big thank you to everybody for giving up 2 hours of your Saturday mornings. I know how precious time is with busy lives, kids, full-time jobs. So to actually be here, it really is appreciated. And of course, a big thank you to my fellow presenters who have not only given up their Saturday mornings, they've also prepared presentations, and they've put up with me phoning them constantly for advice and guidance. So thank you. So housekeeping, like I said, it's being recorded. Please please make sure your cameras are off and you're muted. Now, just to start, many of you will know that a couple of years ago we took a team of military wives to Chile to climb the world's highest volcano, and that actually was the very start of the Forces Wives Challenge. And I'm really thrilled to be able to share with you now the trailer to a documentary that has been made on that expedition. And the reason I'm sharing that really is, if you're sitting there, you're nervous, you're wondering, like maybe you've never left your children before, maybe you've never done anything adventurous before, and you're thinking, I'm not sure I can do it. While you're watching this trailer, I just want to reassure you that every single girl that you see on this video sat in your shoes 10 or 11 months before the expedition. And with FWC, our tagline is "Together we can achieve anything." And the presenters who you'll see today, Glyn, Kate, they've been with us from the very beginning, and with their help, we absolutely made that expedition a success. And I've every belief that we will do the same with this expedition. So I'm going to, hopefully this works, do share screen. Yeah, so hopefully that really captures the emotions that the girls went through, but also the fact that they hadn't left the country, many of them hadn't left their kids before yet. With the training and all of the guidance, they were actually able to be successful. So so next, I'm really conscious that there's a broad spectrum of people watching, from people who have been on this journey from the very beginning, and actually they sat in that very first presentation in Wales, goodness knows, a few years ago now, and they heard about the Forces Wives Challenge and they're still with us now, to people who they heard about Here Is a TELEMARK and they thought, actually, I want to sign up to this event now. So I thought it would be useful to give a bit of background about why I set it up, and where we're heading with it, and really what it means. So a bit of background into myself. I did 10 years in the regular army before pressures of having a young family with my partner also serving meant that we made a really tough decision for me to leave. And in the military, I got to go on so many adventures. I got to try everything. I went caving and sailing and cross-country skiing and climbing and mountaineering, all these different things I just had a go at. I was not particularly an expert at any of them, but I had a go at all of them. And the military life really does give you so many opportunities. And when I was serving, I don't think I would have said, oh, it's tough for families, but I never really took the time to fully appreciate it, because I was full of my own exciting life. And it wasn't until I left and I saw life on the other side of the fence, if you like, that it just struck me how much sacrifice is made by the families. And I decided I wanted to give something back. And Forces Wives Challenge was really my way of trying to give this community some of those experiences that I'd had in the military. So at the beginning, I really thought I wanted to take a team to Chile to climb the world's highest volcano, so just under 7,000 meters. It was a massive challenge, and Glyn, who you're going to meet in a minute, was one of the key people that made that expedition a success. And from that, it sort of snowballed, and now we've done 17 different events, from virtual events to Kilimanjaro and all sorts of great stuff. So I'm just going to share my screen again to just go into a presentation. Okay, so where are we up to now? So like I said, Forces Wives Challenge has grown from that one major expedition at the beginning. We now have over 720 ladies. We've supported over 30 charities in our events, and we've raised over £45,000 for charity. So something like that I'm extremely, extremely proud of. And before this presentation, we've done a bit of work to try and really narrow down what Forces Wives Challenge is. What when you join Forces Wives Challenge, we've come up with a pledge that is really saying what we're about, our values, so that when you join us, you can, it sort of really captures, I think, what FWC is about. So the first one is, if something is important enough to me, I'll find a way. And this really resonates because if I think back to some of the girls on the volcano, I remember one girl who, we got to the winter training weekend, her husband got deployed last minute, she's got a little boy, and she knew that if she didn't make the winter training weekend, then she wouldn't be able to be on the expedition. So she paid for her little boy to fly up to Scotland with us. She got her family to drive across Scotland, pick up her little boy, take him back, have him for the weekend. And I think that for me just really captures that if you want something badly enough, then there'll always be a way to make it happen. And the next one, which is really important, is embracing positivity and thinking kind, because we as military spouses, we go through a lot. We have our partners away a lot, our kids have to move schools, we have to move jobs, we deal with a lot. And what's really important with FWC is that we go into every situation thinking kindly, especially when in adverse situations that we will be on FWC challenges. There's pretty adverse situations. It's about straight away thinking kind. Why is someone reacting the way they're reacting? Why is someone feeling the way they're feeling? It's trying to, I suppose, show empathy and put yourselves in their shoes. There's all sorts of things that could be happening in their lives, which is why they're reacting in a certain way. So the next one is to work together to overcome and achieve. From the very beginning, our tagline is together we can believe anything, we can achieve anything, and I absolutely believe that. I really do believe there's very few things that as a team we can't achieve. Embrace the Type 2 fun. So Type 2 fun was something that was introduced to us on the very first weekend, volcano training weekend, goodness, ages ago. And this is the type of fun. This isn't the type of fun when you're sitting with your friends at a festival, drinking beer in the sunshine. This is the type of fun when you're cold on the mountain, you're tired, you haven't slept, it rain's pouring in, and at the time you're miserable. But when you get to the pub at the end of the day, or you're sitting around a roaring fire, it's that kind of fun where you're reminiscing, you're laughing, you're going home, you're telling your family. There's lots of Type 2 fun in FWC. And then the final one, so this is my time, I'll own it. So we are often in the supporting role, and we are often the ones that are holding the fort at home. But FWC, we aim to give you the opportunity to, this is your moment to shine. So really take that opportunity and run with it. And I've kind of mapped them across to 5 words that I feel really do resonate with this community: determination, kindness, community, fun, and adventure. So just keep those in mind. Right, enough from me. How are we doing for time? Great. Introduction from me, then we're going to have a history of the Heroes of Telemark from Helen. Glyn's going to talk about the Heroes of Telemark expedition itself. We'll have a quick break. Then John's going to look at the fitness training. Kate's going to do the medical and resilience brief. I'll go through the next steps before the Q&A at the end. So I'm just going to stop sharing. Brilliant. So now I just would like to introduce Helen Carter. Now, Helen served a full career in the regular army and is a passionate military historian. I've been on a battlefield tour with her to Crete. She does lots and lots with the Special Operations Executive, the history of them. And really, what's so special about Helen is, sadly, there's not a huge number of female military historians. And actually, when I asked Helen to do it, I was absolutely thrilled that she said yes. And you'll see from the background that she has a very interesting selection of of memorabilia in the background. So Helen's got a few slides. It's a 20-minute presentation. Scribble down some notes, and yeah, enjoy. Thanks so much, Helen.
Cool. Cheers, Heather. I'll just see if I can't get the it is up and running. Can you see that?
Yeah, that's good. Thanks, Helen.
That's super. Okay. Well, lovely to be here with you, ladies, and a few gentlemen as well. It's going to be a really brief description of operations and the operation to destroy the Norse Hydro heavy water plant in Norway. And I'll explain why the raid was so important to the Allies' efforts to defeat Nazi Germany. However, I know Glyn also knows a lot about this and some cracking stories, but time does not permit at the moment. And I'll also apologise in advance for my pronunciation of Norwegian names. So we'll kick off with a bit of context. War breaks out in September 1939 following the Nazi invasion of Poland, and Soviet Russia, which signs a non-aggression pact with Germany and occupies half of Poland also, and also invades Finland. Now, Norway had not been involved in a war for over 120 years, but it was recognised by all sides that the country was strategically important for the Germans because it provided Atlantic-facing ports for their warships and submarines. And therefore invasion of Norway by the Germans was highly likely. And the Germans had infiltrated many agents into Norway pre-war and also exploited the rise of the Norwegian Nazi Party led by Vidkun Quisling, who later became the Nazi puppet leader of Norway. So in 1940, the British land troops in Norway to assist the Finns against the Russians, but ultimately had to withdraw as the German invasion of Norway from the 9th of June to the 10th of May 1940 was followed very quickly by the 10th of May 1940 invasion of France and our withdrawal to and evacuation from Dunkirk. But the UK becomes a refuge. The Norwegian royal family escaped to the UK along with many Norwegians who joined the Royal Norwegian Army in exile, in effect. With other Norwegians following on ships that covertly crossed the 290 or so nautical miles from Norway to the Shetland Islands. That route becomes known as the Shetland bus. It was used so frequently. And some of these men and women joined the Special Operations Executive Linge Company. And that's the Norwegian Independent Company number 1, as it became known, and prepared for covert operations in Norway. Now, Special Operations Executive wasn't an army organisation as such, but run by the Ministry of Economic Warfare, and it was largely tasked with sabotage and the organisation of resistance and some intelligence collection, and that was done across all the occupied countries of Europe. Its personnel, who were male and female, were given military status, theoretically to give them prisoner of war status if they were captured by the Germans, although it was rarely recognised by the Germans. And likewise, those civilians supporting resistance activities, aiding visiting agents, and etc., had no protection if they were captured. They were either summarily executed or they were sent to concentration camps. So there was a considerable risk of being betrayed by your fellow Norwegians, Quisling supporters, and those people who might be your neighbours. So Norwegian agents and their civilian contacts risked their lives daily to gather vital intelligence on the German occupiers and to conduct acts of sabotage. Now, before the war, Norsk Hydro was the sole commercial supplier of heavy water to the world's scientific community. And heavy water is a byproduct of the manufacture of nitrate-based fertilizers. And I'll just explain why it's called heavy. Ordinary water, H2O, hydrogen oxide, contains 156 deuterium atoms per million hydrogen atoms. And in heavy water, the deuterium replaced most of the hydrogen to make deuterium oxides, and the mass of the atoms is physically heavier than the hydrogen, and it makes the water heavier. Now, British intelligence were aware of German efforts to develop an atomic bomb, that was based around a method that used heavy water, and the heavy water is used to regulate the speed of the chain reaction during the fission process in the uranium. It's when you split the atom, and that creates the principal component of the bomb. So already we had Norwegian agents such as Odd Starheim here playing an important role in collecting information on the heavy water production in Norway from the earliest days of the conflict, so we could track the German development of atomic bomb technology. Now, Professor Leif Tronstad of Norsk Hydro had escaped to London and was able to provide accurate plans of the heavy water plant, along with a guy called Einar Skinnerland, an engineer at the factory, and both men played an important role in planning the operations. Military intelligence learned that the Germans had ordered an increase in the heavy water production in 1941 and 42, so of concern clearly. And in 3 weeks, Skinnerland was exfiltrated from Norway, debriefed for all his knowledge back in the UK, given a crash course in parachuting before being dropped back into Norway. The Germans actually believed he'd been off sick from work, so when he turned back at work at the factory, not an eyebrow was raised. And he continued to pass intelligence on what was going on in the factory to the UK via our agents in neutral Sweden. So it was a means of getting information out that way. A plan was formed to destroy the heavy water production using British commandos. An advanced team of Norwegians, the Grouse, Operation Grouse, was to land at the Hardinger Plateau to prepare the way for the freshman team of British Royal Engineer Commandos to land by gliders and then conduct the raid on the Norsk Hydro at Vemork. The 4-man Grouse team parachuted after 2 cancelled flights due to bad weather on 18th of October 1942 at Fjærfjett. They then skied with 6 large containers of food, weapons and explosives towards Vemork, and you can just make out the route there. The number of containers meant they had to make double journeys to move all the equipment, and the freezing weather and the ski conditions forced to abandon some of the food en route, covering about 60 miles, 100 kilometres. And they arrived pretty much exhausted at a disused ski hut in Sandvatn on the 6th of November 1942. And they've been living off a daily ration of reindeer meat, 4 biscuits and a bar of chocolate, which sounds interesting. I'm not sure I could last on that. Okay. Now, once the Grouse team was in position and had checked out on landing ground, they signalled the code word 3 pink elephants to indicate that they were in position. The 34-man Operation Freshman team were then prepared to fly in 2 Horsa gliders towed by 2 Halifax bombers to the landing site identified by the Grouse team. It took off on the 19th of November 1942 from Scotland and aimed to land 20 miles south of Rjukan, where the Grouse team would meet them. Now, the 400-mile night tow gliders had never been tried before. It was a huge risk. And just 6.5 hours into the flight, 1 Halifax crew requested that they return to base. They'd gone into low cloud and the glider had become covered with ice. And as the Halifax made a turn, the tow rope with the Horsa glider snapped, and the pilots actually feared that the glider had dropped into the sea. In fact, the glider crash-landed in Norway, but the 9 surviving men of the 17 passengers and crew were captured by a German patrol. The 4 badly injured survivors were murdered in hospital by a military doctor, injecting air bubbles into their veins. And the remaining 5 were executed at Grini concentration camp. They were all wearing uniform, but Hitler's 18th of October commando order, which was issued the day that Grouse landed, in fact, dictated the execution of uniformed service personnel operating behind the lines. Against the Geneva Conventions, I should add, but that didn't bother Hitler. The second Halifax crashed 10 miles inland, killing all the crew. However, only 3 crew from the glider died, and the remainder of the crew and the passengers were arrested by German field police. Again, all were executed, with the wounded being propped up against the wall and shot first in front of their comrades. But thereafter, the local Norwegians took good care of the grave sites thereafter. So the Special Operations Executive Planners next pulled together a new team, this time of Norwegians, codenamed Gunnerside, to join the Grouse party to carry out the attack. Now, the Grouse operation was renamed Swallow, but the 4 members of the Grouse team absolutely refused to answer signals for Swallow on the grounds that they didn't believe Grouse had failed as an operation and it was actually ongoing. So we'll call it Grouse from here on in. By this time, another Norse hydro worker, one Professor Brun, had escaped to the UK and was able to bring the raid team a little bit more up to date on German security measures. And the new 6-man team was set to parachute into Norway in the autumn of 1942. But the weather was so appalling they could not fly until the 16th of February 1943. And they dropped in near Jansbou and then skied to the rendezvous with the grouse team, arriving on the 23rd of February 1943. The grouse team had waited 14 months, mainly hiding in the ski hut. The hut was far enough from the road that the Germans did not venture into the Norwegian wilderness, but they were half starved from living off what little reindeer meat they could shoot and also collecting and eating reindeer moss. Hopefully you'll get to try that when you're out there. They were all suffering from frostbite and really not fit to fight. Nonetheless, the grouse team joined the gunnerside team on the attack on the Norsk Hydro, starting out on the night of the 25th of February 1943, evading Nazi patrols to reach the Norsk Hydro. Now, they had 3 options going into the Norsk Hydro itself. One was to come down the mountains from above the plant through minefields. Number 2 was across a closely guarded single-lane suspension bridge, and 3 was to descend to the bottom of a valley, cross a half-frozen river, and climb a 500-foot high cliff, in effect. So they chose the last option. At 00:30 hours on the 28th of February, the gunnerside grouse team broke into the factory using bolt cutters, which the group's leader, Joachim Ronenberg, had actually bought in Cambridge on a day off as being more useful than the army issue ones. The 6 men took defensive positions around the entrance that they created to break in, and then the 4-man demolition party went in. Now, they initially attempted to gain entry into the building basement through a door which was supposed to have been left unlocked by a contact. It was actually locked, as was a second one. The contact had been ill that day and hadn't been able to come in and leave them unlocked. 2 of the team managed to find a way in through a cable shaft, and 2 others broke in via a window. Once inside the heavy water production room, 4 of them laid 18 explosive charges whilst holding a night watchman at gunpoint. Before setting the fuses, they had to search for the night watchman's glasses because he was worried he wouldn't be able to find his way out without them, or get a new pair in wartime Norway. At which point, a second civilian worker stumbled in on the team. So as soon as the fuses were set, with a 20-second delay, both Norwegian civilians were ordered to run, and the demolition team also beat a rapid retreat. Remarkably, the explosion in the basement was nothing more than a dull thud when it was heard outside, and that noise actually failed to alert the German guard force to the raiders. A single soldier stepped outside, waved a torch around for a few seconds, but the plant was noisy, it ran through the night, and the combination of the basement location, thick walls, and the wind dulled the sound. Plus, people were used to hearing thuds from snow melting and falling down the side of the valley. However, 4 or 5 months' production of heavy water went down the drains, and the raid was a success. Better still, the whole gunnerside grouse team escaped from the factory and headed to a hideout. 5 then skied on an epic 500-kilometre, 300-mile trip to the Swedish border and safely crossed into the neutral country on the 18th of March. 3 remained in the area to monitor the results of the attack, and 2 went to the Norwegian capital, Oslo, to continue resistance work there. However, there were consequences of the attack. The Germans, supported by Quisling's troops, conducted retribution raids, burning houses and arresting over 150 Norwegians who were imprisoned or sent to concentration camps. Now, after about 6 months, the heavy water production facility was repaired and production resumed, albeit at a lower rate than before. So they tried air raids by the American Air Force on the 16th and 18th of November, and that actually ended up killing 21 Norwegians and 22 aircrew who didn't come back, without successfully fully stopping the production or destroying the store of heavy water. It was still too far underground in the basement. However, the Germans decided to transfer production and the remaining heavy water to Germany. So the decision was taken by SOE to destroy the heavy water whilst it was in transit on the ferry across the Tinjar Lake. So on the 20th of February 1944, another Norwegian SOE team led by Knut Harkleid of the gunnerside team were able to plant explosives on the ferry, and they were timed to explode as the ferry went over the deepest part of the lake. and they succeeded in sinking 15,000 litres of heavy water at the cost of 4 Norwegian and 4 German lives. Now, the Nazis reportedly did conduct a small test of an atomic bomb towards the end of the war, but it's not clear if they'd managed to get the chain reaction necessary for controlled fission for splitting the atom. Kurt Diebner, the head of the Nazi atomic bomb project, stated, "It was the elimination of the German heavy water production in Norway that was the main factor in our failure." That's the failure to build a bomb. However, it's also the case that Nazis didn't really invest the same level of research and resources as the Americans did in their atomic bomb program. And the American atomic bomb process used graphite rather than heavy water. And graphite proved to be rather more effective at controlling fission, as the Japanese found out. But, of course, in 1942-43, it was not possible to know that the Nazis would fail to produce a workable atomic bomb. The scientific intelligence estimates was that they might have had a workable device within 2 years. So all the operations to destroy the heavy water were absolutely essential and ultimately successful, despite the tragedy of the Operation Freshman. The operations, the bombing raids and the ferry sinking were done at the cost of 91 lives, plus the 150 Norwegians imprisoned in the reprisals. Actually, an extremely low number when you consider the casualties that would have been caused by an atomic bomb had the Nazis made use of one. Of the grouse and gunnerside teams and the supporting planners and agents, only 2 did not survive the war. Professor Tronstad, he was murdered by Norwegian Quislings just at the end of the war, and Odd Starheim, who collected some of the early intelligence, who was killed in action in March 1943 when he was in the process of stealing a ship and sailing it to the Shetland Islands. So to conclude, I think a quote from the recommendation for the medals for Operation Grouse and Gunnerside team is most telling. Where the essence of an operation is teamwork, the singling out of individuals for recognition is very difficult and invidious. And it was actually teamwork that saw the Grouse and Gunnerside teams successfully overcome the challenges of extreme weather, the Norwegian wilderness, the threat of capture and execution by Germans, to conduct a series of really successful attacks that prevented the Nazis developing an atomic bomb and possibly winning the war. And I'll conclude there, and I'm up for questions at the very end or whatever's in the side. I'll just stop the share. There we go.
Thank you so much, Helen. Wow, there's a heck of a lot in there, and a lot of different moving parts. And I think what really resonated with me was just the incredible bravery, the sacrifice, and the sense of service that really came across. So we will be, for those of you who continue on this journey, we will be learning more and more about all the different parts. So that was just a tiny little flavour of what's to come. So thank you so much, Helen. And anyone's got any questions, please fire across at the end. So the next speaker we've got is Glyn Shepherd. So Glyn has been with the Forces Wives Challenge from the very beginning. Poor him, he's my adventure mentor, if you like, and we're really, really lucky to have such a great supporter. Glyn has done over, going to tell your age now, Glyn, 30 years of experience leading groups from cadets all the way across to special forces, a breadth of experience. He's climbed pretty much every mountain you can imagine. He's been guides for various different TV productions, including the Ray Mears production. And correct me if I'm wrong, I think you've done this expedition 12 or 13 times?
39.
Okay, I got that totally wrong, 39. So Glyn's actually retired, but he said to me he'll come out of retirement one last time to take us ladies on this epic adventure. So we're very privileged and we won't let you down, Glyn. So Glyn has also, he was one of the main trainers for the volcano expedition, so he knows all about our community, and I can't think of anyone better to have with us. So thanks so much, Glyn. Over to you.
So thanks for the introduction, Heather, and thanks, Helen, for the history that you gave us. That was really, really good. I'm just going to go and add a little bit of history to this, just to make you understand where this particular Heroes of Telemark expedition comes from. So after the Second World War, the British Army had thousands and thousands of troops in Germany, and they decided they needed to open up some outward bound centres to encourage soldiers to do adventurous activities, which would help in their boredom after war and lots of other things as well. So one of the centres they opened was in Norway, called the British Outward Bound Centre, Norway. I was posted there as an instructor for my first posting when I joined the Army Physical Training Corps, and I met some amazing people. I went there with a forces wife, and a lot of my peers didn't go there with wives, but they married Norwegians and stayed out there. And the reason I tell you that is because the guy who runs this particular trip that we're going on is a great friend of mine, Brian Desmond. He settled in Norway and ran a lot of adventurous expeditions for Canadians, British people, Norwegians, lots of other people, and was keen on running battlefield tours. And as he did battlefield tours, he met most of the saboteurs. So he's great friends with a lot of them. As time went on, Ray Mears, the television celebrity, wanted to carry out a documentary of what the saboteurs actually did, how they lived in the wilderness and what they had to endure when they were doing their sort of saboteur missions. They contacted some people in Norway to help them set up for this filming, and they contacted Brian. And Brian was going to be the fixer. He was going to be the person that got the land clearance, the political clearance, brought in all of the landowners to make sure they could travel on the land, got skidoo drivers in, hired an aircraft to film it, and so on. And when Ray started filming, Brian, who was the fixer, said, you know, you're actually incorrect in what you're saying there. It actually happened this way. And over a period of time, Ray got to really trust Brian's judgment. And Brian was sent to talk with all of the saboteurs to see if they would take part in this documentary. And they said no. And Brian, over several months, convinced them all that it was a really, really good documentary that was going to be filmed. It's going to be factual. There's going to be no Hollywoodism in it. It's going to be absolutely as the saboteurs experienced it. So it was a goer. So Brian worked on this project for quite some time. Cut a long story short, Ray wrote a book, which is really worth reading if you can get your hands on it. eBay, only a few quid. Absolutely brilliant book. And he produced his documentaries for us to see on BBC. Afterwards, Ray said, would you please run Heroes of Telemark trips for my clients with Woodlaw, which Brian did. When I left the military, Brian asked me then to take over as Ray Mears' head guide on running the Heroes of Telemark trips. And Brian put together different packages for a broad spectrum of clients, from Ray Mears' clients all the way down to, you know, special forces guys that were coming on. And he's put a package together for the Heroes of Telemark wives, so for the Forces Wives Challenge. It's a brilliant package, absolutely fantastic. And over the years, I've heard lots of people say they've done the Heroes of Telemark trip, whereas in fact, they probably just skirted over the route, whatever. And what's special about this is that Brian has got permission from the Norwegian government to travel over the Hardangervidda and visit the huts that the real Heroes of Telemark stayed in. It's a fantastic opportunity. And so the package he's put together is really, really special in that there's a 5-day training package, and in that you get taught to ski. So you can be a novice when you start. You don't have to have done any skiing before. Taken loads of people over the years that their first experience of skiing is coming on a trip like this. So it's quite intensive. 5 days of learning how to ski, learning how not to fall, learning how to get back up after falling, learning how to ski with a rucksack and such stuff. But also, those are the physical skills that you learn during the daytime. But then there's also the skills of learning about winter survival, staying in snow shelters, maybe a snow hole. You might get an opportunity to stay in a snow hole, when you're out there, and learning how to look after yourself in a winter environment. Now, this expedition's been put together for March, which hopefully will be a bit warmer. Don't hold me to that. It could be -17, -18, something like that. If it's -6, it'll be an absolute joy to do it. So February tends to be a lot wilder weather, big storms. So that's why we've pushed it through to the March to give you a better experience. But having said that, there's a lot of skill required to look after yourself in a winter environment. Now, in the past, I have taken women on these expeditions, but never, ever has a full team of women done it before. So this is going to be a one-off, an experience of a lifetime. It's going to be brilliant. Now, what happens after the 5 days training? We make a decision on whether we are fit enough to go onto the Hardangervidda as a group. Over the years, I think there's only one soldier I didn't take onto the Vidda, and that was because they weren't fully committed to what they're doing. So if you have the right frame of mind, then you can achieve this. It's not all about the physical, it's about how you apply yourself to it. And so we've never taken anybody onto the Vidda before that we don't think can succeed. So, you know, we're really confident that people can do that. And so what we do then is we drive from southern Norway up to the middle of Norway. So if you imagine Norway as a big fist, the fist being at the bottom of it and the arm going up, we arrive in the middle of the fist and we meet up with some Norwegian skidoo drivers, and then they drive us for 1.5 hours on a skidoo up onto the Hardangervidda to exactly the same place that grouse dropped in on that time in October many, many years ago. And we are left on the Vidda with just the equipment that we need for the next 4 days on the Vidda. So we pull pulks with all our food in, all our safety equipment and everything, and we carry rucksacks with just our warm clothing for the day, light food and things like that. So it's a small rucksack, but we pull a big pulk. And so to pull the pulks, there's 3 pulks, we have to go into 3 teams of 4. So we work it out who those 4 are, and we have turns in pulling the pulk. And the first day skiing is a relatively short day, but it's learning how to work as a team and to pull the pulks. But it's your first day pulling a pulk, so there's a lot of learning to be done. And then there's a bit of hard physical work at the end of that day, pulling the pulks, which are very heavy because they've got all the food in for the 4 days and all the safety equipment, up to our first hut. And the huts we're staying in are the exact huts the saboteurs stayed in, and you'll be sleeping in the same beds that they stayed in as well. So that's a relatively easy day. It's about 9 kilometers, but it gives you a flavour of what the trip's going to be. The next day is the hardest day, and depending on avalanche conditions and the route we take, it's between 24 and 28 kilometers. The beauty of going in March again is that we have a longer light day, so the light will be there in our favour. It is a hard day, but it's something that is achievable. Again, once we get to the next hut, it's a hut that the saboteurs stayed in, hidden out the way, and this particular hut is called Ripier Hut, and if you translate that from Norwegian to English, it's grouse. It means grouse, which is spooky. So we spend the night there, and then the following day is a long, long day again along a massive lake, which wasn't a lake back in the day. It was a valley of bog, and the saboteurs sort of fell through the snow into the bog, and one of them actually fell through the lake or the water broke through the ice and went into the water, which is horrendous. Hopefully that won't happen to us. So we'll have all the safety cover for that, so don't worry about it. And this particular lake doesn't see any sun, so it's about 7 kilometers of just pushing along in the cold with the wind in your face. But eventually at the end of that day, then we finish that day about midday, and we get to a hut which has now got electricity, which is unbelievable, and it's owned by Jens Anton Poulsen's family. So he was the leader of grouse, And he broke into this hut in the war and was chastised by his family for damaging the door, and he wasn't well liked, to be honest. In fact, he had to go back later on and fix the door, and his son actually built an extension on the house later, which is amazing. So we stay in that hut. And those of you that want to snow hole get an opportunity then to dig a snow hole outside and stay in a snow hole overnight, or you can stay with me in the log hut, the log heated hut with electricity. It's entirely up to you. And then the final part of this particular part of the expedition is a ski out. And it's a hard ski out because we move into undulated terrain. So we're off the Vidda, flat, flat, flat all the way. And we start a lot of climbing, a lot of descending, where your skills are a lot better by then. So you've learned not to fall over, and you've learned how to pull the pulk, which is a lot lighter then. And we meet up with Brian, who is a very charismatic character. In fact, there was an article written on him a few years ago, and I've got to tell you that the writer said that he was a mix between Basil Fawlty and James Bond. And when you meet him, don't laugh, because that's exactly how he's like. He's amazing. And so he meets us in a cafe, and we have a coffee and a burger, and then we get taken to a lovely, lovely hotel. And whilst you guys are showering and just sorting your lives out, myself and the other guide will go and recce the route for the attack on the factory, which you guys will be doing the following day. It's very technical, and that's why we have to go and do a recce for the risk management to make sure it's safe to do. We do that the following day, and then we go up into the factory and look around it, which is now a museum. And that's special in itself. Hairs on the back of my neck stand up every time I go in there. So that's pretty special. And then for those of you that want to, can do the Heroes of Telemark challenge at the end of that. And that's the escape route that the saboteurs took to get back up onto the Vidda to ski to Sweden. And that is a force march up underneath the cable car that leads you up to the Vidda. And there's something like 42 bends in the track. And I normally say that if you do it in under an hour, you're a superhero. If you do it in an hour 30, you're a Jedi. And if you do it under 2 hours, you've done yourself proud, because that's what the saboteurs did it. Once that's done, we go back to the posh hotel, have lovely food, and then the following day we drive back to the airport to finish the whole expedition. It's really exciting for me. One, because it's a Forces Wives challenge. Two, it's never been done by a team of women before. And that's something that I think is really, really special. And three, I retired from this about 4 years ago, and I said I'd never, ever do it again. So I can't believe that Heather's convinced me to go back and do it again. But hey, it'll be brilliant. It'll be really, really good. So if you have any questions about it, then just put them up, and Heather will forward them on to me, and then I'll pop in again at the end to answer anything that you may have. Thanks very much for listening.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Glenn. I think, when you were talking, I just feel extremely honoured to be going on this trip. Very, very few people have the opportunities, especially to go and actually sleep in the huts that the saboteurs slept in. And when you're talking about the factory, and just I get sort of a tingling in my tummy of just excitement, and it just incredibly honoured. So thank you so much for coming out of retirement. We won't let you down.
Thanks very much, Heather.
So our next talker we have is John Fern, from E3 Coach. Welcome, John. So John, we're really, really lucky to have John on our crew, if you like, to make sure that we are Heroes of Telemark ready. So John has over 22 years of coaching experience. He's got an MSc in athlete development and peak performance. He's a really accomplished athlete himself. He competed nationally as a junior athlete, and then transferred to extreme sports, mountain biking, Ironman, the list goes on. And he now uses his passion for sport and adventure to really coach and help others, which is great to have John on board. And also, many of you will have heard of Wendy Searle, who skied. She's a Forces wife. She's got 4 kids, and she skied solo, unsupported, to Antarctica. And John got her ready for her expedition. So we're in really, really safe hands. Right, John, over to you.
Cheers, thank you very much. Oh, just wait for the screen. Okay, so there we go. So good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, Heather, for the introduction. Thank you to Glenn and Helen as well for your amazing insights. I actually sat and listened to all of that and really enjoyed it, and was getting quite excited by the trip. But anyway, so a little bit more about myself briefly is for over 20 years, I've been working with endurance and adventure athletes, ranging from polar solo unsupported to 8,000 meter summits, to people that row the Atlantic, and all other kinds of crazy adventures, to people that sometimes just want to take on a 10K run. I work with all types of different athletes of all different types of abilities. And so what I see my role here today is, hopefully after all of that, shall we say in some way, overwhelming information that you've been given, is to say, don't panic, okay? Some of the stuff, I mean, when Lynn was talking, I'm thinking, wow, yeah, this is pretty gnarly. This is pretty hardcore, but it's fine. Yes, it is, but you will be able to get there. It's not a problem. I don't want anyone to sort of like be panicking and thinking that you're not ready. Yep, today you might not be. But going down the line, following the processes, you will be able to get ready. And one really important thing that Glyn said was, it's psychological, okay? I've worked with a lot of professional athletes, against, as you just heard, Wendy Searle, who's a mum of 4 working. And let's just say she kicked the butt out of a lot of professional athletes down there in Antarctica. So it all comes down to what goes on up here. And so long as you start to believe in yourself and you believe in the team around you, you can actually accomplish what you set out to do. There's not, the training side of things is going to be very, very personal. I think you've got a September meetup, which is your first group meetup. So I think that you need to be focusing just on your general fitness, just getting out, being active, continuing to do what you do already if you are active. If you're, so we say, lower on the active scale, just start to increase a little bit what you're doing. Mixing in the cardiovascular and some general basic sort of strength work will get you into a good place ready for September. And from September, then you're going to have more information about what's going on and what you've got to do going forwards. No one needs to be going out there now dragging 3 tires up mountains, okay? You don't need to be doing that. If you start doing that now, you're going to blow yourselves up. So I hope that that's maybe helping take a little bit of pressure off. Don't go crazy now. The way most of these ultra endurance type events work and people succeed at them is slow, steady, gradual consistency. And it really, really does pay off. We could go into the science of the aerobic system, and that's the system that you need to be working. But also a major area is obviously the strength, because you're going to be either dragging poles or heavy packs up steep terrain at times. So you've got to have that strength element. But at no point do we have to start overloading yet. Okay, it's all about trying to keep it relaxed, keep yourself in a positive mental state, and just slowly, consistently build that up. I'm aware that you've obviously got families and other commitments and things which you're going to have to mold around this as well. So again, try not to let that be a pressure. Try to work out ways that you can move your training forwards without it being a pressure and a stress, because that extra stress adds to fatigue and tiredness, and it demotivates you. And at the end of the day, this is an amazing adventure. So you want to keep that super psyched energy up. It's controlling that nervous anxiety so it stays positive and it keeps fueling you to move forwards. Don't let it overload. Look at the whole trip as a one piece right now and think, my God, how am I going to do that? Just break it down. Simply break it down. And part of what I will do is I will be helping with the training structure as you go forwards, and I should hopefully be on training weekends as well. so we can discuss people's more individual needs, or whether there's a more group approach or whatever. I'll take on that responsibility, which is in essence what my job is helping you to achieve what your goal is. Okay, and an important part of that for me is not just the physiological, but it's the psychological side of it, of which I kind of feed into your day-to-day training. So when you start to follow the plan that we will create, there'll be elements in there that will put you under, shall we say, the psychological stresses and strains that you might encompass or might meet on this type of an expedition. But the way that I always work it is that it fits alongside what you're doing anyway. And so it doesn't have to become such a demanding, overwhelming type of a thing. That's kind of it really from me on that training side of things. I'm sure there's going to be lots of questions as regards to training. I know it's going to be a real barrier for a lot of people, the physicality of what you're taking on, but I will be here like the others at the end. So you can ask us any questions you like. You know, there are no silly questions, and I think that Heather will arrange as well that you can contact, you know, off of the group chat as well if there's things that you wish to ask, which is a really important element, that you can feel free to communicate with us and with me with regards to training at any time. Yeah, so I hope that's helped to take some pressure off. I don't want anybody to panic. Self-belief is going to be really important. Steady consistency, really important. Don't go crazy straight away now. Build it up steadily, and you've got good markers along the way with the September and the November sort of training camp elements. So you've got a progressive line to follow. Yeah, and everybody on this team will be here to support, because everybody wants to see you do it and succeed. And hopefully between everyone here, we've got the tools to make that happen.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, John. That made me feel really reassured, actually, not to start panicking and running around with a tyre. That sounds good. But yeah, any questions people have directed so far has all been around the fitness. So please ask John anything you like, because he will have, he'll have the answer. So if you're worrying about fitness, please, John's here to help. So thanks so much, John.
No worries. Thank you.
Right, so next up we have Dr. Kate Connolly, who is going to come on the expedition as the expedition doctor. Kate also joined us on the volcano expedition to Chile, and is also a Force's wife, which is great. So she has done the Wilderness Medic course, and then she's also a GP at the minute with a master's in parasitology, which hopefully she won't need. But yeah, over to you, Kate.
I just wanted to say a big thanks so much to all the other speakers for such great talks. So I'm following on a bit from what John was saying. And yeah, for those who don't know me, I'm Kate. I'm the medical director for the Forces World Challenge. As Heather mentioned, in my day job, I am currently a GP in Oxford. I came to GP quite late. I have quite a lot of experience more in acute medicine, some anaesthetics. I'm also an ALS instructor, and did a master's in tropical medicine, which I absolutely loved. And I suppose for me, I've got so much out of Forces World Challenge, but it really has provided me with an opportunity to build on that kind of interest in travel and expedition medicine. And it was such an honour to be involved in the volcano expedition, and just the idea of being able to do something else with an amazing group of women is incredibly exciting. And Heather asked me just to mention a kind of brief talk about medical considerations. I've called it considerations, so they really are considerations. The most important thing, if you take nothing else away from this talk, is that whatever I say today, there are very few absolute contraindications to anybody being able to come on the trip from a medical point of view. I think in it, as well as kind of worrying about, are we fit enough, people get really worried about their overall health and whether they've got any injuries or medical problems that might actually mean that they can't go. And there are very few things that would mean that there would be an absolute no to you being able to go. And I just wanted to explain a bit about the process from the medical point of view. The first thing that we do, or that I will do, is to get a pre-expedition questionnaire out to those people that are wanting to be considered for the team. And the questionnaire, the role of the questionnaire really is to ask about certain conditions. Some of them are listed here, but it's more general conditions, general well-being, medications that you're on, allergies, and it really is relating to that, forewarned is forearmed. And a lot of it is to do with expedition planning and to make sure that the medications and the equipment that I'm taking from a medical point of view cover any possibility or any problems that we could see arising when we're away. So in addition to kind of general things, asthma, diabetes, other problems that we'll be asking about on the fall, things we might consider and look at a little bit more closely is musculoskeletal injuries. Glenn mentioned the kind of process of skiing and dragging the pole, and obviously, as I say, a musculoskeletal injury will not preclude you to being able to come, but might just be something to consider, particularly multi-joint pains, back pain, any osteorheumatoid arthritis. Cold-related injuries, if you have a history of cold-related injuries, frostnip, frostbite, just means you might have to take extra precautions. Circulatory problems, things like Raynaud's, cardiac disease. And I'm certainly not going to ask anybody to, during the question, I think it would be inappropriate for people to ask individual concerns. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my number and my email address I have done on the final slide. And the email address is an NHS email, so it's encrypted. Which means that it's a safe email address for you to be able to email me on. And also my phone number will be on there as well. So please feel free to message me, to call me, to WhatsApp if you have any niggling concerns or worries about anything. Then yeah, just share that with me and we can have a chat through it. If you wouldn't mind going on to the next slide, Heather. So I've mentioned the pre-exped questionnaire and what to anticipate with that. After the questionnaire has been completed, I'll then probably just call, if anything's flagged up, just for a bit of an informal chat. But ultimately, the sign off and the risk lies with the GP anyway. So we would always ask you to get your GP to sign you off before coming. So there will be some additional paperwork to do once we've gone through the process, but we'll be able to have more of a chat about that in September during that weekend. And as I say, if you want to talk before then, please don't hesitate to give me a call. The other part of my role is actually not just looking after the medical concerns, medical side, it's actually to do with research as well. So when we went to the volcano, the research we conducted two projects. One was with NASA, where we completed some research which focused on team dynamics in extreme conditions. The other one was actually a proof of concept study that was looking at resilience. Does adventurous-based physical activity that we're doing build resilience? And it was a very small study, which is why it's a proof of concept, really. And we looked at general well-being baselines of before we deployed as a team and post. And actually the research found that what we'd done had a really positive impact from the time when we started the training weekends up to the 6-week mark after completing the expedition, had a really positive impact on the team's mental well-being. It seemed to improve people's confidence, self-esteem. There was an improvement in social networking as well. And just because it was such a tough challenge physically and mentally, I think people did generally feel really resilient. And we want to build on that so that we can say, the challenges that we are doing something really positive for the individual and for our community as a whole. So as part of this expedition, I would also ask that you just consent to being involved in that research process. And it will involve questionnaires being filled out, but also some focus group work, where just getting a feel of how people are doing generally. And that will be, again, from the September weekend.
Thanks so much, Kate. That was really reassuring, actually. And having been on with Kate on a major expedition before, she was absolutely fantastic. So I feel really lucky that you've said yes to come again. Brilliant. So finally, just before we go into Q&A then, I've just got a couple more slides which just go on to the next steps. So maybe you've you like what you've heard and you're thinking, oh yeah, I would like to apply, hopefully this will let you know the next step. So it's really important when you go on expeditions like this that you have an aim, and the aim of this expedition is actually twofold. So like Glyn said, we want to be the world's first all-female team to reenact the famous Heroes of Telemark, which is this World War II mission. But secondly, and just as importantly, it's to raise awareness of the determination and sacrifices of our forebearers gave to secure the freedoms we all enjoy today. So when you're in the military, they do a lot of something called battlefield tours, when you go to various sites and you learn about different battles and different missions, so that you can sort of tactically, you can learn from the tactics, but also the British military have such an incredible, rich history. And so we need to learn from our forebears, from our allies. And it's really important that we understand the sacrifices of those that went before us. And equally for military families, we are part of the military community. We're absolutely an essential component of the military community. Without us, it simply doesn't work. So another big aim is that we raise awareness of the sacrifices. So the roadmap then, today the presentation, then I'm aiming to get the applications open on Monday. I will email everybody the application anyway. It will be done online. There'll be a link on the website. I would recommend that you draft your answers in Word, just in case, and it crashes or something, these things are like, but you will submit it online, and that's just questions really about a bit of your background, why you want to do it, and then the applications close put at the end of July, which is actually being brought forward because our first weekend is in September. I needed to have a good sense of numbers before August, really, to actually liaise with Sandhurst. So our first actual training weekend when we all get together is going to be at Sandhurst in Surrey. It's going to be probably about 24 hours, but over 24 hours. We'll meet on the Saturday morning. I will email you a few weeks before, a month before, to let you know what exactly the weekend will involve, and then you'll be done before lunch on the Sunday. So quite a short weekend, and nothing to worry about. You don't have to go training like crazy and turn up really fit. It will be a number of presentations, and then there'll be some sort of teamwork stuff, a bit of a teamwork physical event, but nothing, like I said, that you have to go crazy about. And then if you still want to, if you think, I've loved this, I still want to go to the next phase, the next, like John said, we'll pick up a bit more training. And then the next training weekend down in Taunton, that will be 5th to the 7th of November. We'll announce the team after that. And then we'll do winter training in January. We're just clarifying what that will look like. The actual expedition itself will be in March. And then there's a post-expedition catch-up, which when we all come together after the expedition, and reminisce, have a few drinks, have a good time, and that's in April. So eligibility, all this is on the website, so there shouldn't be any surprises. So it's for FWC members. Applicants must be female partners, spouses or long terms of military personnel, and they can be currently serving or a veteran. So like I said on the website, we want to showcase the diversity of our incredible community. So don't worry if you've never skied before, don't worry if you've not been on an adventure before. We want a real diverse community, a really diverse team. So don't deselect yourself before you've even started. We want a huge selection of people. So like Kate said, medically fit, but any questions about that, you can talk to her about. And then also she'll be on the weekend in September, so you can do face-to-face. And eligibility will be confirmed on application. So this is just a plea from me, really. A lot of people, I know that they are eligible because they're friends of friends or something, and they can be, but there's some people who I don't know if you're eligible, so I'll need help maybe contacting your welfare officer, or basically just proving that you're actually eligible to join, if that makes sense. So key facts, it's an 850 personal contribution for the expedition, plus £50 per training weekend. We need, for this expedition to go ahead, we need £25,000 sponsorship. And like any of these expeditions, it's the sponsorship which is the biggest hurdle. Already approaching companies to try and get some sponsorship around. We're the first all-female team, we're military wives. Lots of great angles that we can offer. So if you know any companies that you think might want to sponsor us, we can do any forms of sponsorship package within that 25 grand would be fantastic. Personal accident insurance, you need to make sure you get them out for all training events. You will need to take out travel insurance for the expedition that you'll need to pay for. You'll need personal clothing, which is in general warm weather stuff, but skis and boots will be provided. But again, on the training weekends, we'll go into more detail about exactly what you need to take and all of that. So administration and commitment. FWC is a wholly volunteer organised company. So anybody who's involved with FWC, we don't get paid. We do it on while we've got jobs, we've got families. So it's just really a plea to me to make sure you do things on time, so I'm not having to chase because I haven't really got time basically. And what we've found from previous expeditions is it's commitment. There is quite a lot of commitment on something like this, but we've set it up with the minimum amount possible to select the team. And finally, just really enjoy the journey. Whether you just have you've found 2 hours to yourself and you've sat and you've watched this presentation and you think, actually, I don't want to go any further, then hopefully you've found this experience enjoyable. Or maybe you come on the first weekend and you think, do you know what, I've met a few lovely ladies, but actually I don't want to go any further. Just wherever you end up on this journey, I really hope you enjoy it. So there's our contact details. You should have all that. If you can give us a follow, a like, the more followers we can get, the more engagement we can get, the better. We do have a closed Facebook group called FWC Connect that I don't do a lot on. I need to be better, but if I could get more people to post, to comment, to share, that would really help as well. And finally, I'm going to leave you with this quote because I just love it. That photo is Nakoya, who was on one of the FWC girls at the very beginning, and I think it really captures what we're trying to achieve.